What's up, everybody? Ryan Thomas live once again on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Another Wednesday episode and another guest from the Trainwreck Sports and Entertainment brand. None other than the man, the myth, the legend, Zach Maniac Sheldon. What's going on, my man?
Thank you very much for having me, Mr. Thomas. I'll tell you what, I've been on WGR, I've been on Channel 4, but this is what you work every day for. It's time for the Thomas Takeover Pod.
Yes, it is. What better day than to be on the show than this beautiful Wednesday? You could be outside, playing volleyball, beach volleyball. You could be maybe playing charity kickball tournaments, winning a charity kickball tournament, I might add, on your part. And instead, you're talking to me. I mean, I would choose the latter option over those things, though, right?
Oh, of course. Well, you'd be silly not to. But, hey, like we say, Ryan, we didn't choose the blog life. The blog life chose us. So we just got to go with what we got, play to our strengths. And if that's running the ball in 2019, then that's exactly what we're going to do.
We're going to pound the rock, Frank Gore style, right up the middle, in between the tackles. That's how we got to do it. But,
no doubt about it.
But I definitely am excited to talk to you about a lot of topics today. Namely, you were at the training camp today at St. John Fisher for the Buffalo Bills 2019 season training camp, and you were representing your brand, Trainwreck Sports. You guys have been doing some phenomenal things to kind of go back to how Zach and I met, for the viewers and for the listeners that don't really know how we met and how we started kind of talking and working together and stuff with my man Degenerate Al and Ty B and all those awesome fellas. We met at the first Buffalo Podathon, and I had followed your brand for quite some time, probably since it had started. And I was just really, honestly, I got to start off by saying I was captivated, Zach, captivated by your ability to interview people. I've never seen anyone interview people quite like you do, and your style is something to be seen for sure. So I wanted to give you those props to start off the show.
Well, hey, I always appreciate props as an actor, but with that said, I mean, Ryan, you got to give yourself a little bit of credit, because when you get an easy person to interview, like you were that day in late October 2018 at Podathon 1, it just makes it all the better. That's the key, and you know it. You interview people all the time. If they're not giving you a lot, then you know what? Maybe the angle to take is to play on the fact that you're not getting a lot, to kind of play back at them that way. And then if they are giving you a lot, well, then that's just like a give and go with, John Stockton, Karl Malone, pick and roll in the post. Exactly,
and what a dynamic duo that was in its heyday, especially. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna be the John Stockton. You're gonna be the Karl Malone of this podcast. So let's get right to it. As far as this training camp, I want your honest opinion, your honest take on what you've seen so far. You've been to multiple training camp practices representing your brand, Trainwreck Sports, and what are your thoughts on Josh Allen and the offense with this new look offense? It's a completely reinvigorated offense, new offensive line, pretty much, new wide receiver core. What's your take on the Buffalo Bills offense heading into, this 2019 preseason and regular season?
Well, I'll kick it off with my opinion on Josh Allen. It's always been, since we saw him make his first throw at New Era Stadium last year during a preseason game, if you remember, he threw a deep ball and it was actually incomplete, but the stadium went nuts because it was basically like a 60-yard throw right out of the gate. From the beginning, there's never been any doubt about one thing with Josh Allen. He has the physical ability. The arm is a cannon, and we saw last year that those legs are no joke either. They're not just for looking good in shorts.
Right.
With that said, I think we saw, at the beginning of camp when there wasn't any pads on, the offense was really thriving, and they've still been thriving a little bit somewhat. But, Beasley, John Brown took a couple days to get going, but they were really having a lot of success at the beginning of camp when pads weren't on. And then you saw the defense say, that's they were letting up big gains the first couple practices, and they said, that's something that we got to tighten up, and that's something that we're going to work on. So it sounds cliche, but you got to remember, both sides are getting paid. So you got to keep that in mind when I say that the defense has really kind of taken, I'd say, a stride forward the last day or two. And I think they were definitely the better unit today. I think that Josh struggled a little bit today, but like I say, it's a good thing to struggle in July so you can have success in September.
Right, and that's really what training camp is all about. It's this iron sharpens iron mentality of you're literally practicing as a team. You're practicing offense versus defense, and for every moment that the offense has some slip-ups, it's a positive for the defense and vice versa. So I saw out of some moments that weren't so good. I also saw some moments that were good. There were a lot of positives and negatives. There was one throw in particular that he made to, I believe it was to Andre Roberts on the sideline that was right over the shoulder of Lorenzo Alexander. I thought that there were some really nice throws, and then I thought there were some throws that weren't so nice, but that's what training camp's for. And as far as
that's kind of the Jacqueline Hyde you'll get from Allen for right now, because he can throw a bad pick one play. And then I think I know the throw you're referring to. It was about a wheel route to Roberts. And, I mean, let me tell you something. You couldn't have placed this ball better with a GPS tracker. He threw it right over Lorenzo's shoulder. Roberts caught it in stride. But, yeah, it's exactly like we said. This is the time for getting better and, working out those kinks. Iron sharpens iron, baby.
Right. And I feel like this offseason was geared towards Josh Allen's, we'll just say, weaknesses. Maybe not so much last year. He was not a quarterback that was willing to just make that simple throw. Really, with Josh Allen, my biggest criticism of his rookie season is that it was the little things that were not really shored up for him. Just not really willing to throw that screen pass, or didn't really throw that screen pass on target, or wasn't willing to throw the ball into the slot, had some hesitation throwing over the middle of the field. He'd tuck it and run it. Whereas with this training camp, at least today, I saw him willing to throw the ball over the middle of the field. I saw him willing to throw the ball in a check down, and I think that's very encouraging. Would you agree with that?
No doubt, RT. I think you're reading between the lines on what we're seeing at camp, because I think, no doubt, the biggest focus since they put pads on has been Josh Allen and his technique, mindset, or whatever you want to call it, towards those intermediary to short throws. Think about the two easiest ways that Allen can improve from last year. He can start making short throws better, which we know is something that he struggled with. Even when he went to go make it, it was a little bit of a struggle. So he could work on the touch, and he could work on the decisiveness with short passes. And this sounds like an obvious thing, so I don't mean to sound like ridiculous, but don't throw it 35 yards downfield across your body as you're going out of bounds, which you did about 2 to 3 times last year as a rookie. But I expect that we won't be seeing it this year.
I think mainly I can expect it because I feel like he actually has the weapons that will allow him the freedom to do those things. Whereas last year, he didn't really have a Cole Beasley dependent slot receiver, and he didn't have for my money, John Brown is probably one of the few guys in the NFL that could actually get under Josh Allen's deep ball. And I think that was something that I saw today, and we've seen it throughout training camp. What are your thoughts on these new wide receivers as far as Cole Beasley and John Brown? What do you like, and maybe what don't you like?
Well, I mean, I think the thing I like most, Ryan, is just, and I didn't really picture this in the offseason when we got him. I think a lot of people were underwhelmed by signing Brown and Beasley. I think that you could have blown a lot of people out of the water by, say, trying to acquire a Julio Jones, who's been rumored forever that he's going to get traded out of Atlanta. But what I'm seeing on the field is actually a group of wide receivers that, for the first time I can remember, complements each other. I mean, you have Cole Beasley and you have Zay Jones, who can specialize in these 8 to 15-yard intermediary routes. And then you have John Brown and Robert Foster, who can take the top off of a defense. So from what I've seen this first week of practice, I mean, I'm very encouraged. Obviously, we're not going to know until it translates to a game. But the biggest thing, too, I mean, we got to remember, was that, Josh came in week 2 last year. He spent the whole preseason with the threes, so basically he had no time to develop continuity with really the starting unit. Right. Whereas this year, he goes into July knowing he's the guy, knowing that he doesn't have to look over his shoulder, he doesn't have to work to get better every single day just to get playing time. And it might be a position where he's more comfortable. And this team is obviously, it goes without being said, going to have a lot more continuity as of September 1st than the team had last year.
I couldn't agree more. You touched on it a little bit as far as the defense goes. You liked what you've seen from the defense. What player has really jumped out at you on the defensive side of the ball? Because as Bills fans, I think Bills fans right now are really zeroed in on that offense because it is so new. It does have a lot of new parts, but the defense is almost looked at as, well, our defense has been good the last 2 years, so we should be good again. We might, on paper, fans look at that defense and think that it should be even better with the addition of Ed Oliver and some of the pieces that they add along that side of the ball. But what player has really jumped out at you defensively that maybe fans might not know about?
I mean, they probably know about him, but
right.
I'd say that the ones that, you didn't expect, because obviously you expect Tre'Davious White to do great. He had an interception today. You expect, Tremaine Edmonds, who showed so many flashes his rookie year, to take that next step and progress. And I think we're seeing both of those things. So obviously those are kind of the obvious ones I could say. And of course I could say Hyde and Poyer have come in as steady as ever. But the two players I've been really impressed with at camp, actually, I'm going to go three. Jordan Phillips. Okay. He's proved at camp that he's more than just a guy who can come out of the tunnel and get people pumped. This is a guy who will legitimately, I think, be in our rotation this year and be a force to be reckoned with. Star had a tip ball today. Jordan Phillips grabbed it and took it back for a pick six. It was an absolute.
I saw that. Yeah, that was great.
Work of art.
That's
but
awesome.
Then going from the trenches to the secondary, Levi Wallace and EJ Gaines. I mean, coming into camp, you heard a little bit about these guys, and obviously, just not to throw any shade at my UB guy, Cam Lewis, he was making some noise today. But EJ Gaines and Levi Wallace, they both had tremendous camps so far. From what I've seen in the drills and everything, they've always been in position. And Gaines, simply put, was a player that I think a lot of us were a little bit remiss to have lost last year. I don't know how you felt about that, Ryan, but right. I was hoping that he would be somebody we would bring back in 2018. And then when we let him go and the Browns signed him for a couple of million, I was pretty disappointed. So I'm happy to see that he's having a good camp, and I hope that he'll challenge, for maybe even potentially a starting DB spot or the nickel DB spot.
I love their depth at corner, and really, obviously, it starts with Trey White. I think, as you said, you expect Trey White, Tremaine Edmonds, you expect those guys to take that next step, but to actually see them take that next step is pretty awesome, and to also know that they have depth at a position which is extremely important in today's NFL at corner, being that it's such a pass-happy league. They have had their fair share of injuries the past few years at those positions. Now I feel like if they do have those injuries, they have the depth to kind of swallow that bitter pill, if you will, and move forward. So I completely agree with you, and I really like your assessment of EJ Gaines, because he was somebody that, as you said, went from Buffalo to Cleveland for only a couple million, and you kind of scratched your head and wondered, why was that? Why did we let him out the door just for that? And it's nice that they were able to bring him back. As far as
DB depth can never be overrated in these in the current era of football that we live in.
Right, I couldn't agree more. As far as you mentioned, you have a UB guy on the team. I'm going to bring up another UB guy on this Buffalo Bills team. Quarterback Tyree Jackson. Now, I was very, very happy that Buffalo brought him in for this camp due to the fact that he was not drafted. I thought he should have been drafted.
Absolute joke that he was not drafted. I'm just going to say it and get it out of the way. The stigma that UB was treated with this past draft class, whether it was NBA or NFL, is an absolute joke. These scouts should pull their head out of the sand and actually start looking at the players' talent on these rosters. UB players this past year deserved a lot better than they got, and hopefully they'll get better in the future. But go on.
That was really what...
Okay, well, we can talk about Tyreek. You want to talk about Tyreek out there every day first? He wants to get better, and it's just... We knew from UB that this guy was a hard worker. And it's great to see that he wasn't just a hard worker at UB relatively. He's a hard worker at the NFL level.
Hard worker in general, too. And he just has that persona and that attitude about him that he's a great representation of what you would want in a third quarterback, to be quite honest, or even potentially one that could potentially be a backup, because he's out there, first guy out there, last guy coming in, and I think that there's real physical talent there that is very similar to that of a Josh Allen, where maybe if worst case scenario, let's say that Tyree Jackson's their QB3, and I hope to God this doesn't happen just due to the fact that I want to see Josh Allen.
I'm already where you're going.
Right.
Sure.
Josh Allen gets hurt, Matt Barkley gets hurt. The skill set of Tyree Jackson is not much of you're not jumping far and away from Josh Allen within the skill set of Tyree Jackson, in my opinion. Big, strong, can move in the pocket. Maybe there's some issues there with accuracy and maybe anticipation, but those are all things that I think he can learn, and I really hope he makes this team.
No, I'm hoping so as well, because it's like you said, he won't be ready this year, which is, I mean, I don't even want to say unfortunate, but I mean, maybe that's why NFL scouts weren't anxious to get him on their team, knowing that he would be at least a one-year project. But if we can bring Tyree into camp next year, he is an awesome option for us to have as Josh Allen's backup. It's like you said, you don't have to change the game plan at all.
Right.
And it's three things he's got to work on. Those fundamentals, like you said, and just that throwing motion. I mean, he's been able to get away with it for so long because he was 6'7" and 260. He's still got a cannon arm, but Dayball and Dorsey are going to tweak his mechanics and get him to throwing even more bullets down the sideline. So
Right.
I think that, again, I don't even want to practice squad him, because I'm telling you, I would really be worried about a team, snatching him up.
I couldn't agree more, and I want him on this roster due to the fact that I think he is a potential real player.
6'7" takeover. You can't teach 6'7".
You can't. You cannot. 6'7", that I think he's more so. The biggest thing about him, as you said, he's a hard worker, but he's got that leadership quality that he really rode he wore that leadership role on his sleeve at UB. And I want that in my quarterback room with Josh Allen and Matt Barkley, who I've really liked what I've seen from Matt Barkley. I can honestly say, you might agree with me on this, I'm not sure, but I've never been happier with the three quarterbacks on a Buffalo Bills team.
Yeah, I mean, I maybe it's just us maturing as fans to where we've never really been, so focused on the second and third guy, and maybe it's because we finally have a guy that we want to be the franchise guy. Maybe we're more focused on the backups, but I'm with you. I mean, they've talked about it multiple times since Allen's been here, quote unquote, the room. You want the room to be good. You want to have a good vibe in there. You want that being a group where everyone can get better and everyone can progress. And in this case, where we can help Josh get better each and every day.
There's a position out on that offensive side of the ball that has taken some hits as far as injuries, namely the tight end position. What is your take on the state of the tight ends on this Bills roster? I'd love to get your take on that. We've had Tyler Kroft had his injury. Dawson Knox has been dinged up a little bit here and there. What are your thoughts on the tight end position with this Bills team?
Well, I mean, I think the tight end position, first and foremost, with the receivers we added, is crucial. Because right now, I think it's the only position where we don't have, A, a surefire option, and B, we don't have, depth. I mean, we have depth and we have bodies, but we don't know, is Kroom going to, be what he was last year? Is Kroft going to even be able to come back from this injury? Kroft, to me, is the wild card because he's someone that was really plugged to me as, going to be a difference maker for these Buffalo Bills. And I believe he's one of our first signings in free agency. So for him to go down with that foot injury is a little disappointing. If he can come back at all, then I think we're feeling great, because what I saw from Dawson Knox before his injury was awesome. This guy was all over the field. I mean, it's hard to find an equivalent, but who was the guy on Stan Fran last year? Breda, maybe?
George Kittle, tight end?
Kittle,
yeah,
yes,
yep.
Kittle. I was thinking the right, yes.
Yep.
Very much just storming down the field, creating the lane. And, Josh is going to want that surefire receiver. You got Brown, you got Beasley, you got Zay. They're all moving at 1,000,000 miles per hour. Whereas the tight end, it's a little bit more of a safety blanket target. So hopefully, I'm pulling for Kroft to get healthy, Kroom to be what he was last year, and for Dawson Knox, I don't know, are we going to nickname him Dawson's Creek or Fort Knox to come back strong?
Oh, man, I think it depends. If it's the ladies, they should be calling him Dawson's Creek. If it's the men, they got to be calling him Fort Knox, right? I mean, It's just
Sounds fair to me.
such a strong name. Dawson's Creek, shout out to James Vanderbeek, Varsity Blues, one of the better football movies out there. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But
what a plug! What a plug on the takeover.
That was a great plug. But anywho, I definitely agree with you though. Tyler Kroft, he was one of the first free agents that they signed, and he was somebody that filled in really well for the very much injury prone Tyler Eifert. And Tyler Eifert kept going down with his fair share of injuries that he's had over his career. Tyler Kroft was right there to fill that role. And I thought when Buffalo signed him, I thought, here we have a guy that has played second fiddle his whole career. Now we're giving him a tight end one opportunity. And I really wanted to see that through. But then they draft not one tight end, they draft two tight ends. And I like the second tight end, Sweeney.
My God, Sweeney is a monster out there. Let me tell you, I can't speak for his hands. I haven't seen him do as many drills as I've seen, but he is the guy when they're all walking around. He looks huge out there.
Right.
I don't know. And also I saw his family at practice today. So because I'm assuming nobody else out there would be in Sweeney jerseys already. But with that said, it's exciting. Clearly, it's not, having multiple tight ends to have success isn't as ridiculous as an idea as it sounded like 5 to 10 years ago. The Patriots proved it. It's a copycat league. If you can get athletic guys at the tight end position, maybe you can get a better mismatch on an LB than you can get wide receiver to DB. You know what I mean?
Right. I couldn't agree more. I think Sweeney is actually really going to push somebody else out that tight end room. It could be Kroom or some of the other tight ends that they have. I like Lee Smith because he can block really well, but Sweeney's athleticism, he just seems to me like the moments that I've seen him catch the ball, he's had those yards after catch moments. And that's really what I want. I want my tight end to be that guy that, in an ideal world, you can't get you'll never replace a Rob Gronkowski. I don't think there'll ever be another Rob Gronkowski in the NFL, to be quite honest. But if we could get maybe like a George Kittle light, as you said, I would be all for that, because let's face it, the tight end position in Buffalo Bills history has not been too great.
Are you trash talking Mark Campbell right now?
Not Mark Campbell. Mark Campbell was great.
Campbell's good, baby. Let's go. Three touchdowns versus the Miami Dolphins.
I'm not knocking Pete Metzelaars either, because he was great. Jay Reamersma, he was okay, but we really need some production. As you said, we really need some production out of that tight end position, because Josh Allen needs that safety valve. And I think as of now, and I'll get your opinion on this as well, but I think as of now, that safety valve, the true safety valve of this roster on this offense via the air, is Cole Beasley.
Yeah.
And I have seen in this one training camp practice today, they did not use Cole Beasley exclusively in the slot. He's been moved around quite often throughout the day today. Did you notice that?
Yeah, you're going to look to get him all over the field.
Right.
Let me tell you, the worst thing you can do is just put him in the slot for 57 plays for a game. You think Belichick's going to be, thwarted by that?
Right,
He's going to jam Beasley at the line, and then Josh will be looking all over the field when some unnamed Patriot gets his third sack of the day,
Right,
so obviously, I love what Daboll's doing. I thought the offense was super vanilla last year for the first 8 games. I was kind of wondering what was happening.
Right.
But, when Allen came back, our friends at Cover One, they said it was a complete transition to the air raid offense. So, hey, that's something I'm in favor of, is just being a little bit more exotic on offense, as long as you have the personnel to back it up. You can't run Mike Tolbert wide left. I never
will ever forget the moment I saw Mike Tolbert running wide left.
I'll never. You're right. It's ingrained in all our memories. It's burned into our brains.
There's some studios, podcasts, and sports shows where they have moments on the wall of really awful moments. That would be front and center. Just one of I remember I screamed to the point where my voice cracked, and I sounded like I sounded like I hadn't even hit my growth spurt yet. I was so mad.
Welcome to my life every day.
No, you're good. You got it going on though. You know that.
I'm good.
But I definitely feel like this division, the AFC East, is theirs to take. What do you say to that? Now that's a hot take due to the fact that the Patriots have reigned supreme over the division. But I look at the division. Miami is in a massive rebuild. The Jets are probably one step behind us, in my opinion, just based on the fact that I do not have full confidence in Adam Gase. And I'm not really, I don't know how anyone can look at this Patriots roster and think that they got any better last year than they were last year. What do you think of that?
I agree with you, the take that there's no way the roster got better, but we both know they still got number 12. So
right.
I agree. I think that the Jets being way ahead of the Bills, which was basically the narrative of the past 3 months, was completely wrong. So if you follow Manish Mehta, you can just block me right now. But with that said, I mean, as long as number 12 is still under center, as long as, I mean, they've still got Gilmore, they've still got a bunch of good playmakers on the defense. Believe me, I'll be hoping every day that this is the end of the Patriots dynasty and that this is, the beginning of the end.
Right.
But until I really see it, to be honest, until I see it for at least in November, because they've even teased us with a couple 1-2 starts.
Right. The Kansas City Chiefs game that they got blown out
a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that because that was the first time you really thought it was the beginning of the end. But no, they and even last year they were 1-2 at the start. They dropped games at Jacksonville and at Detroit, which they were favored in.
Yeah,
so,
the Detroit game.
Again, I'll believe it when I see it. But
right.
With that said, I'm hopeful. I mean, yeah, you're right. They did not replace any playmakers. When they didn't have Gronk last year, they struggled. Mm-hmm. And they did not replace him. You're not going to replace him. So I'm expecting them to be a little bit worse this year, but we'll see what really happens come week 4 at the cap.
Right. And as you said, the fact that they lost Rob Gronkowski is one thing. You're never going to replace Rob Gronkowski, but they literally didn't replace him. They went out and said, well, we got some guys on the roster already, and we're going to bring in Ben Watson, the ageless wonder, who's older. Is he older than Frank Gore, Ben Watson? I'm pretty sure I could be wrong on that. But I
love that Ben Watson just has all kinds of, Bills connections. Like, he was in the Monday night game. He caught a couple touchdowns when Leotis McKelvin fumbled.
Right.
Crushed our hearts. Yeah. That was in what, 2009?
2009. That was the season they got T.O. Yeah.
Yep. So that was when the T.O.s were hitting the shelves at Wegmans and Tops.
Right.
So that was in 2009. And then you fast forward 8 years. He's the one who caught the ball from Flacco and ended up short of the first down that clinched the Baltimore Ravens losing that game and sent the Bills to the playoffs.
Oh, that's right.
So a lot of people like to say, Andy Dalton ended the drought, or Adam Vinatieri missing a field goal in the snow game ended the drought. I like to say that Ben Watson coming up 2 yards short is what ended the Bills' drought.
And there was like a pass interference play by Marlon Humphrey on a receiver, which allowed Cincinnati to stay on the field because Cincinnati.
I can talk about that drive for a century, Ryan. Great call by the refs. You cannot allow that PI to just go uncalled.
That was the best call of all time for Buffalo.
Probably the greatest call I've ever seen, honestly.
It's funny because there's been players that I've wanted to come to Buffalo, whether it's via the draft or free agency, and it never happens. Ever. Never happens. But these last few seasons, these last two drafts in particular, Josh Allen, Tremaine Edmonds, and Ed Oliver, where do you see these guys in the future as far as their talent level? Where do you think these guys? Do you think these guys will be all pros? Do you think these guys will be maybe offensive, NFL MVPs? Where do you see these? Where do you see these guys as far as their talent? How high is their talent?
I mean, I could be talking for another century on this, Ryan. I mean, let's just look at the facts. Josh Allen's about 15% larger than any human quarterback has any right being, right? You could say Tremaine Edmonds is about half a foot taller than any linebacker has any right being.
Right.
So thus he's faster, he has longer strides. And then you have Ed Oliver. At Houston, they were having this dude go out into the flat and cover running backs. No defensive lineman should be able to do that. No defensive lineman should have the speed to go into the flat and legitimately break up a pass play to a running back. So what they have, and I say this in the nicest way, Ryan, they have three freaks. They have three athletic freaks who could absolutely jump out the gym. So it's just in the brains for them. If McDermott, Dabble, Dorsey, Kelly, John Murphy, Billy Buffalo, if whoever you need, if they can get it into these guys' brains what they got to do, then the Bills' success, it's not a matter of the process. It's right around the corner.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. That is phenomenal. I have another question for you as far as the Buffalo Bills go. You've been to the training camp. We've dove into the roster. We've looked over the positions and all that stuff. Do you think this season is playoff bound based on what you have seen thus far?
You know, it sounds crazy. Right off the bat, they got to – this sounds so stupid. The defense is going to be good again, I think. I think the defense has been good realistically all 3 years they've been here. There were some games that got away from them last year and simply – you know, when your team's going 3 and out over and over again, like they were in the early part of the year, September, October, no defense is going to stand against that. But with the defense being better, I mean, they're going to have a shot at it. I think if Josh plays 15 games, if Josh starts 15 games, I think their floor, honestly, is 7-9. So can they improve? Can Tremaine Edmonds take those steps forward? I mean, Trey White, we said, is a sure thing, but can he take that step to being in the discussion on around the NFL or whatever, show you want to talk about, of being the best DB in the league? Because he's up there now, but he's not in the discussion for the best, I wouldn't say. He's in the discussion, but he's not. Can he solidify that? Can he take that step forward? Because maybe if he takes that step forward, you only need Taron Johnson, Gaines, Wallace to be average. Literally, because with Oliver, Harrison Phillips, Trent Murphy. I mean, this is a guy they acquired last year, and I'm not criticizing him, but they got almost nothing out of him last year. I don't remember seeing him until late November or December. So I don't know if that was because of his surgery, and he was finally really never able to get going until then. But that's another guy, RT, that was a free agent acquisition basically for this year more than last year.
Right.
So on paper, they have every addition they should need to get to 9-7.
Right.
If you're at 9-7, you're probably, playing a week 17 scenario to get in. And if you're 10-6, you probably at the least have the number one wild card. So can they make the playoffs? Absolutely. It's really going to come down to the 2 games against the Patriots, in my opinion. I think you got to go 1-1 against the Patriots.
Yeah, you would have to go 1-1 against the Patriots.
Can't go 0-2.
At worst,
can't just start every season 0-2. That's the thing. It's a disadvantage in the NFL. If you factor for the past 15 years that they've had to play the best coach and the best quarterback combo of all time twice a year, the playoff drought makes a little bit more sense.
It makes a lot of sense when you put it that way, for sure. And when that quarterback head coach duo has, as you said, 15 years, they have completely reshaped their roster around Tom Brady time and time again, which is why they're constantly in the Super Bowl or at the very worst the AFC Championship game. I think this year with New England, they're going to be even more reliant on the run game than they've ever been before. And I say that because they don't have Gronkowski, and I did see, albeit seldom, moments where Tom Brady would overthrow or underthrow his receivers, where maybe that arm strength is or maybe not arm strength, but the timing is starting to maybe wane a little bit. That could be my eyes just wanting to see that, but I did see it. Do you agree with me on that? There was one game against Pittsburgh where he made some throws that he never makes. He never makes throws like that.
I'm sorry, you cut out there. Who makes them? Sorry.
Oh, Tom Brady. I was talking about how. As far his.
No, there were times last year where he was making decisions. You're absolutely right that he would never make, throwing across his body into coverage. And the reason he typically never makes those is because he makes such good pre-snap reads and everything like that. Now, you could argue that Tomlin is kind of one coach who's always the best you can has had Brady's number. I mean, he's been able to fluster him in past games, even though Brady, I think, obviously, like he has versus everyone, is a winning record. Right. But yeah, I mean, there's chinks in the armor. There's no doubt about that. So, I mean, I don't think Brady can last forever. I'm slightly hoping this is his last season.
There's one facet of that I haven't talked about on the show yet, and I'm glad you just said that, because there was a report by somebody, Yahoo Sports or somebody like that, one of the reporters out there on Twitter, said that Tom Brady has 1 year left on his contract. This is a contract year for him, and the Patriots have actually tried to negotiate more than a year, and Tom Brady has not even fielded negotiations with the Patriots. He's basically said, I'm focusing on the season and this season alone, and we'll take it from there. That, to me, makes me really wonder if this is the last season for Tom Brady, because before he would renegotiate and maybe take less money, and maybe they would do, finagle his contract a little bit, where now he's not even doing that. He's just saying, I got 1 year left on this contract, and we'll go from there. So I think this might be it for TB12.
Yeah, I mean, first off, what percentage of players can enter a contract year and just be like, I'm going to play it out and see how it goes, versus like the team want to negotiate, 2% of athletes maybe?
Right, not even. I mean, look at
just an unbelievable power position to be in for Tom. I mean, that I can note right off the start.
Right. And you look at the day and age of the NFL now, where you got all these guys holding out, and you're wondering, why would Tom Brady not ask for more money? Or why would if Tom Brady is saying in Tom versus Time, I don't know how I could play till I'm 45, I really think I could, and then Gisele Bundchen says, we'll see about that. Chances are that at some point he will agree with the wife that it's time to hang him up, and that might be sooner than later.
Oh, I mean, there's no doubt about it. I'm sure he's feeling familial pressure. Like, he's got to be getting older. Like, and she sees him every day. We see him when he's like, he ran as fast as 40 since he was like 22 or whatever. I guarantee you he's at home, he's aching. Remember when she let it slip that he had concussions, and it was like a big story because he had never had one reported? Right. She's like, he's had concussions. So this guy's like had things wear on him as a player. Don't let that fool you. Just because, as much as I hate to admit it, he is the GOAT. But with that said, you can make him human. You gotta pressure him. When he's been pressured, he's not elite. He's not elite anymore. He's good. He's not elite anymore. So that's the thing. I think that's what they're doing in Buffalo. Harrison Phillips, Ed Oliver, Jordan Phillips, Trent Murphy. I mean, we're building an army on that line.
Shaq Lawson.
That's the way you got to take it on. Shaq Lawson. Oh yeah.
He looked very good. This was in the 2-3 years he's been here. Today was his best practice. I would go out on a limb and say that. Now, that's not saying that he's an all-star, but in the few years that he's been here, today was, I thought, by far his best practice. I was actually blown away by how well he played, as far as just disrupting the offensive line and creating pressure and everything like that. But I'm excited for the season. I know you're excited for the season. I know that the train never stops at Trainwreck Sports, and I've enjoyed this process, man. As far as previewing the season and everything like that on my podcast, it's been great. But meeting people such as yourself, such as Degenerate Al and Ty B and Josh Rest and all the guys at Trainwreck Sports, I look forward to continuing this great friendship and working together in the near future, man. I can't wait.
Well, it's mutual takeover. We love. We've been presenting your podcast for a little bit now, and the reason we do it is because it's high-quality stuff. That's all we just want a great product at the end of the day, whether it's fresh, different, etc. Obviously, you got to do the core stuff, and that's what you specialize in taking care of, making sure that every bullet point gets hit, and you do so in an amazing fashion. And hey, if you sound like a white Morgan Freeman, all the more power to you.
A white Morgan Freeman. I'll never forget that. That was one of the greatest compliments I've ever received in my lifetime. I don't think anything will ever top it. I really don't.
Well, we'll see. You got a lot of potential left there. Take over. maybe if Morgan Freeman calls you the white Morgan Freeman.
Oh, see, See, you knew already what would top it.
Now we got goals. Well, those are what we call goals. That's what we accomplish.
That's the goal. That is raising the bar beyond raising the bar. That is that would be amazing. So, Zach Maniac Sheldon, thank you so much for joining me on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Everybody, you can subscribe to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. And check out TrainwreckSports.com. Check them out on Twitter. You can search Trainwreck Sports. They are literally everywhere. They got wing reviews now, which I will die a very sad man if I'm not on one of these wing reviews episodes at some point down the road. You got to get me on. You just got to.
Something's telling me that you're a season 2 debut, Thomas.
I'm more than willing to be penciled in at any point. So just throwing that out there.
That's what we like to hear. We got to have the best people, so we couldn't be doing that without RTT.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. That's awesome. Thank you for the kind words, and thank you for joining me today on the show.
Of course. Hey, thanks for having me on, and shout out to all your fans.
Thank you. Yeah, they were definitely pumped up to hear that you were coming on, so thank you. You have a great day, man. This train never stops, right?
This train never stops, buddy. Let's keep it rolling straight to the end of 2019.
You got it. Take care, man.
You too.
Bye-bye. Zach Maniac Sheldon, the man, the myth, the legend of TrainwreckSports.com. This guy is a one-man wrecking crew as far as his ability to interview anyone. This guy could interview the Pope, and it would be entertaining. This guy could interview Oprah Winfrey, and it would break the internet. Donald Trump. I can't even think of who else. Bruce Willis. Let's. He talked about raising the bar. I anticipate that this guy will probably be interviewing some A-list celebs one day. This guy is just next level. I'm willing to give him the credit that he deserves when somebody can do something that is in your line of your goals and stuff like that. You got to tip your cap, man. That's just facts. You got to tip your cap. I have really enjoyed working with these Trainwreck Sports guys. My podcast has been featured on their site, trainwrecksports.com, a time or two. And I started a Trainwreck Sports guest tour where I took all of the guests from their brand and had them on this podcast. I've had Jake Watkins on. I've had Ty B on. I've had Josh Rest on. I've had Maniac on. Last and certainly not least, or next, because they got so many other guys. But the next one I'm calling my shot right now. I'm Babe Ruth stepping up to home plate, pointing to center field, and I'm pointing to someone in the crowd, someone that I know is tuning in, someone that I know for a fact is tuning in, listening to the show, appreciating the Trainwreck Sports guest tour, and it is none other than the Degenerate Degenerate Danger Zone. This guy was 88-0 as far as his bets went of betting under or over or anything like that. He's ridiculous as far as his betting acumen, his gambling acumen. He is just through the roof as far as predicting the future of sports and beating the odds of betting. And I want to have him on next. That's the next guy. That's the next man up. So, Degenerate Al, you're coming on the show, and I could not be more excited for that, and I couldn't be more excited to have had the guests from the Trainwreck Sports brand on the Thomas Take Sports podcast. Zach Sheldon, one of the best interviewers in Buffalo. Trainwreck Sports, as said by Kyle Hughes, who was on the show Sunday, he said the future of sports entertainment in Buffalo, and I could not agree more. I'm Ryan Thomas. It was the Thomas Take. Follow me on Twitter at Ryan Thomas take. Join the takeover.